school is ending a week early. The graduation ceremonies are going to have COVID protocols. What do you know so far about what that's going to look like?
Well, I think a really great place for us to start is what schools were able to put together and pull off for last year. So last year they had very similar guidelines, except they were perhaps in some ways more stringent. We only could have groups of 5, whereas now we know we can have groups of up to 100. So it gives schools a lot more flexibility to plan. They have more time than they would have had a year ago, and we know from the feedback we received from last year that the ceremonies they had to recognize the students' achievements were very memorable. They were very much appreciated, and we expect our schools are going to have very similar opportunities to give those students the recognition that they so richly deserve.
Some HRCE schools would have graduating classes that are much larger than 100. Does that mean like 3 different grad ceremonies by, I don't know, last name or something?
Well, what's going to be really unique about this is that schools will work with their community and their students and their staff to plan the ceremony that works for them. So we have schools that have dozens of graduates, up to some of our bigger high schools, which would have in excess of 400 students. So they will come up with ideas. If you're in groups of 100, that would not be a group of 100 students. That would be likely 30 with 2 supporters for each student. So they will have to think about that and think about what it might look like. And I would expect that they'll also look at opportunities to be outside where the numbers can be a bit greater. But that's why they've given schools that extra week to come up with ceremonies that work for them and work for their community.
Okay, so some schools are going to have multiple different graduation ceremonies.
I would expect that there will be a number of schools that have multiple ceremonies, perhaps almost all of them, and they'll follow the public health guidelines, and they will plan around what those are, but also keeping in mind that it's an opportunity to recognize an incredible milestone for students. So we're just really happy that recognition is going to be there for the students.
In terms of budget, more ceremonies, more protocols, more expensive. Is there any issue with planning there, or are there going to be extra funds for high schools to access?
In fact, it'll probably be not nearly as expensive for schools to operate for the most part, because typically what has happened in past years and what people think about is you have these large-scale gatherings where you might rent a big facility like the Halifax Forum or the Dartmouth Sportsplex. They won't need to do that. They'll be doing them at the school. So in fact, it probably would not be a situation where it might cost more. Schools will work through that. We'll be here to help them if they need anything, but I expect from what they were able to do last year that they'll find that opportunity to recognize the students, and it won't be an issue about cost.
Do schools have to submit grad plans to the province, do you know?
I'm not aware of grad plans to the province. They're supposed to work with their regional centers for education to ensure that they adhere with COVID protocols. But let's keep in mind, we found out yesterday what the guidelines are going to be. Our schools will be, I'm sure, going through that. One of the things that's really exciting is that with school not being in session for that week, that all of the staff in the school, if necessary, can bring their collective wisdom and understanding to how to make that meaningful. And I'm sure they'll just come up with some amazing, innovative ways to recognize and to celebrate and to perhaps memorialize through video. And they'll figure it out. And I have every confidence in the world that these will be meaningful events.
So what's the HRCE's role?
Really, we're here to help problem solve for schools if they have any problems, but they will plan these ceremonies to be reflective of what the expectation is at the community level and what the students are hoping to have, and if we can help them get there, then that's our role.
Perfect.